Welcome to the Why We Started podcast, the show that gives business owners a platform to share the real story behind their brand. I'm your host, Vanessa, and each week we dive into the why behind the business. Whether it started from a passion, a problem, or a random what-if moment, this is where we explore what makes your business different from anyone else in your industry. Because behind every business, there's a story worth sharing. Welcome back to the Why We Started podcast. Today's guest is not only a friend of mine, but truly one of the best hype women out there when it comes to podcasting. She helps people build confidence behind the mic and works the behind the scenes magic to make sure that you sound polished and powerful. Please welcome the incredible Tiffany Mason. Hey, Tiffany.
Thank you. Round of applause for myself.
Yes, we're so happy that you're here.
Thank you.
So let's start from the beginning. What were you doing before this? When did you start feeling a pull towards podcasting?
Before this, I was in a sales position and it was selling services to other businesses. And it was very unrewarding because our admin team kept screwing up the orders. So then the customers were getting frustrated. And it was frustrating because the people who had to perform the services were my friends. So as soon as I would say, oh, I sold another account, they'd be like, oh, great, where am I going to fit that into my day? So it was unrewarding in those respects. Then on top of it, I just didn't really like what I was doing. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I started listening to podcasts. There was this podcast by Kathy Heller called Don't Keep Your Day Job. So it seemed appropriate to be listening to that. And she ended up offering a 5-day course where you could explore, different job opportunities and things that you're good at and your passions and stuff. And after that, there was a course that you could take. And so I jumped in hook, line, and sinker, 2 feet first, and just thought, let me see what this is all about. And this was a very expensive program. Normally I spend $40 and I think like, oh gosh, do I really need it? I don't know. Should I really buy it? And I just on a whim bought the course. I think it's important to mention that all along I've really felt God very strongly encouraging me and saying, okay, keep going, keep going. And so that's been very reassuring for me. Through that course, you were supposed to think about your passion, what you were good at, and what people would pay you for. So at the time, I was like, well, I know my passion is music, but what does that mean exactly? So she helps you to explore. And I thought, ooh, okay, I'm going to get guests for other podcasts that are about music. That's what I was going to do. So then I started kind of developing it. At the same time, I had just launched this business called Everyday Errands, where I was going to do concierge services for my local neighbors. So pick up the dry cleaning, prescriptions. I had some light services that I would do for like a birthday party or VA services, that kind of thing. And that was in February of 2020. So we know something very significant happens in March. So
Yeah.
I'm chugging along with this new business and I'm thinking to myself, no, let me not figure out how I'm going to advance this business. Let me just start from scratch because I had just launched it. So I thought, let me just really give this course, if I'm going to pay this much money, let me give this course a chance. And through that, that's when I decided about finding guests for other podcasts about music. And then I joked with my husband on a Sunday and I was like, maybe I should have a podcast if I'm going to be helping people with a podcast, right? So that Monday, I get on the call because it was a class every Monday and every Thursday. And Monday, they would assign tasks. And by Thursday, you had to have them completed. And so on Monday, she says, okay, everybody start a podcast. And I did the assignment incorrectly. Shock, surprise. I'm not much of a details person, except for when it comes to editing. I am very detail oriented then. But when it came to the assignment, I was supposed to start a podcast about my passion, what I was going to turn it into a job. So it should have been about finding guests for other podcasts that are about music. And instead, I started a podcast about music. So I have a podcast today. It's called Memories of the Beat. And you, Vanessa, have been on the podcast. Whoop, whoop. And we talked about NSYNC, and it's going to be me. If you guys did not hear the episode, you definitely have to go check it out. She shared some sweet stories from her birthday party, so that was kind of cute. And yeah, we just talk about memories that are associated with the songs that people choose. And then in the editing process, I was like, wait a minute, this is the piece about podcasting that I want to do. So I have really fallen in love with the opportunities podcasting provides and the editing process, which, you just put your headphones on and escape into whatever that episode is about.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I guess what was the moment you realized that you're like, okay, this actually can turn into a business? What gave you that push?
Right. In that course, everybody had to start a podcast, right? And nobody knew how to start a podcast. So all of a sudden, I became a big source of knowledge for people and a big source of help, which I was happy to help everybody. But also, I realized that there was a demand for it. And I mean, it started out like I was just going to kind of explore it. And then March 2020 happened. And I was like, okay, I don't know if my daughter is going back to school. I don't know what the future holds. And I'm not going to stay in this job that I'm really unfulfilled in. So I thought, let me turn this into a business. I had a friend advise me, say, I know you offered some VA services. Why don't you lean into that with your everyday errands business? And I thought, yeah, okay. And funny enough, I know that the preliminary questions for being on the podcast is talking about, how did you get your business name and those kind of things. And it just very vividly came to me that it should be called Virtually You. And I knew I wanted the V to look like the V from Virgin Airlines or Virgin Records. And so I don't know, just a little bit of inspiration and really finding a passion for it. And I started sinking a lot of time into learning how to edit and being good at editing and what's going on in the podcasting industry. And I never tired of it. So I knew I was onto something.
That's awesome. So, how would you explain what podcast managing is to someone who has no idea what that is?
Okay. So somebody starts a podcast and they think like, I'm going to record something. I'm going to become famous as Joe Rogan and make $1 million.
Everyone wants that. Yeah, of course.
I can assure you that is not the common path.
No one wants to be Joe Rogan. Are you kidding me?
They want to be Joe Rogan and they want to make a lot of money. But what happens is there's something called a pod fade. So after about 7 to 10 episodes, people usually give up. They realize it's a lot of work. And if it's just a passion project, it's almost more work than how much it's feeding your soul. So I personally like to work with business podcasters because their podcast is really feeding their business qualified leads. And that's super exciting for me. So what I do for them, they start this podcast. They think it's going to be like this easy little side thing that they do. They realize, wow, I kind of want to sound good and I really am having a hard time staying consistent. So what I do is I get them all organized on Trello. I set up upcoming episodes and what's been already published, links to everything, really get command central for them for their podcast. And then when it comes to launching the podcast, I break down, okay, these are the 8 things that we need to accomplish, or these are the 10 things we need to accomplish. Here's what we're going to do in week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Then this is your launch week. This is what we're going to do to promote the podcast coming up to your launch week. This is what we're going to do after the launch week. And then we get into maintenance. And really what happens is I always say your mic, my magic. That's because I want the podcaster to go on, record their episode. They're going to say, okay, Tiffany, it's recorded. And wouldn't you know it, about 7 days later, they've got a new episode on the air and they didn't have to do anything. And that's because of me. I come in, I work behind the scenes, I get all the imperfections out of their audio, polish it up, make it sound great, and upload it to their podcast host, and then make sure that their show notes are intriguing, SEO optimized, which is, yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to say that. Okay, now I have to say it because I already said I wasn't going to say it, or whatever. So SEO, the O is optimized. So when you say SEO optimized, it's like ATM machine, right? It's redundant. Anyway, that's what I was thinking in my mind. It helps them to have their podcast episode taken care of. Literally, all they had to do was go record it, and I do everything else. It can be done remotely. And, people like that so they can keep focusing on business.
That's great. I mean, honestly, I feel like one of the biggest struggles with podcasting in general is just the fact that you sound like it's, oh, I'm just going to talk about a topic, but there's so much behind the scenes that goes into it that, I mean, I'm starting this podcast and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so many things I have to do. I applaud you for what you do because I have no idea the strenuous time that goes into it. So I feel it's mostly like time and just the sanity of, okay, I gotta take the ums and the likes out of things too, right? That's a lot of it too. So you sound like you're actually having a conversation versus it being too much, right?
Yeah, too like uptight or whatever, too scripted. The other thing that I will say that I provide for my clients is just being an expert in their back pocket. So you don't have to go and say, okay, how long should the podcast description be? What should it include? How long should the intro be? What should that include? Where can I find copyright free music? You don't have to Google any of that. You don't have to look any of that up. You just say, hey, Tiffany, are we using copyright free music? And I say, yep. So it's nice in that respect too. I've had a client reach out to me and say, I don't know, I'm getting this email. These people say I'm top of the charts and I should really be doing X, Y, and Z. And then they forward me the email and I look at it and I'm like, they're just scamming you. I'm like, your podcast is doing well, but it's not to the point where we can really monetize it yet. So, don't worry about it. And if you want to talk about monetization, there are other ways that we can do it while you're still small. It's just nice to have the expert in the back pocket. You don't have to Google anything, look anything up, just ask me.
Do you feel like most people that go on, like, have their own podcasts, do it to monetize, or do you feel like it's more just a way for their expertise to get out there? What do you feel like is like the most common?
It's indirect monetization. So really what ends up happening is they start their podcast, they're super excited about it. They get the information out, they prove that they're an expert. But what ends up happening on the listener end is they go, oh, okay, I know who Tiffany is. I know what she stands for. I understand her humor and I love it. I understand her mannerisms or I understand her school of thought and I love it. And she clearly is the expert. Yeah, I want to work with her. So by the time somebody reaches out to me in that capacity, if I had a podcast about podcasting, which I don't, and I'm perfectly fine without that, but as soon as you do, then people start to go, oh, I want to work with them. When that person reaches out to you, it's a way more qualified lead. So they already know that they like you. They already trust you because they've realized that you're an expert. Now they're just looking for you to advise them, help them grow their business the way that you've done with possibly yours or, whatever topic that you're talking about. So that's really the benefit or whatever behind having the podcast more so than monetization. But there are ways to monetize at a lower level. So that's not out of the question.
That's true. I mean, what would you consider like a successful podcast? Like, I guess it comes from
Let me interrupt you and tell you what I think that you're asking me because I have a good answer for you. I feel like I hope that people appreciate this answer. So to be a successful podcast, okay, first of all, I would say every podcast that gets out 10 podcasts or more on a monthly basis is successful. Okay. But I think what you're asking for is at what level can you monetize? And that's about 5 to 10,000 downloads per episode within the first 30 days, which it's not common. It's the top 20 or 15%, I think, that can do that. That's not for most indie podcasters, you're not to that level. So what you can do instead is reach out to local businesses. You can say, hey, would you like to have a commercial era ad spot in my podcast episodes? Some podcasters will even get sponsors. So they'll say, I want to have a podcast. I want to share my expertise. And, maybe this insurance company wants to sponsor the podcast. So it always says, this is the why they started podcast, sponsored by Geico Insurance, whatever sponsor that you would end up getting. So there's other ways to do it. You can also do it with affiliate links, selling products, selling services. So, there's just a matter of getting creative. It doesn't have to be where, BetterHelp is inserting an ad into your podcast episode. So success has a much lower definition than when people want to insert dynamic ads.
So why do you care so deeply about helping people start their podcast? What makes it so personal for you?
I know how hard it is to grow your business, and I know that podcasting is an extremely effective way to grow your business. So for me, it's seeing those businesses flourish. So, they have this idea, they're really excited about it. They're bursting with ideas for episodes and what they want that intro to sound like and what they want the artwork to look like. And they're really excited, right? So first of all, nothing is more exciting than helping somebody when they're so passionate about their own project, right? And then you get to be the one that helps it like come to life for them. That is amazing. And then I'll never forget, I didn't help this client launch their podcast, but I did take over their podcast for them. I think that they were on like episode 15 or something maybe. And she checked in with me and she's like, okay, what else do I need to have to get the podcast episode published today? And I was like, girl, it's already published. It's up. She was like, what? that was so easy. So she was so used to, struggling through the logins and uploading the artwork and how to make the show notes great and all that kind of stuff. And really all she did was record. I went and got the recording. I cleaned it up, polished it up, sent it to the podcast host, and she was on the airwaves. And she couldn't believe how easy it was. And so that feels really good for me. I would never say that acts of service is actually one of my love languages, but maybe when I show love to other people, because my husband's is like that, and I've been married for almost 25 years. So I try really hard to play into that love language for him, which makes me think maybe I play into that love language for my clients. Also, physical touch. So I'm probably not hugging all of my clients. That's one of mine is physical touch, but to do acts of service is easy for me. And it's insanely rewarding when they reach out and they are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have a podcast, or oh my gosh, I can't believe that episode is out, or I can't believe I interviewed that person, and just helping people to grow in their podcasting journey. It makes it really rewarding in that respect. So loving what I'm doing, and almost daily I get to get infused with some of that energy. And I'm an extrovert, so I suck energy off of people. So when they're really excited, it helps me to, gain that energy from them and just be excited for them and with them.
That's awesome. I love that for you. So before we recorded today, those are the listening. Tiffany and I actually did a content shoot together. So I got a chance to go into her office, see how she runs Virtually You, and really see like the process that goes along with it. Because not only are we here to share her story, but we're also here, something I do with this podcast is to create a business highlight reel so that their story can be portrayed outside of just podcast world, also on social media as well. Actually, we're able to kind of pay to be a guest on this podcast because you wanted that business highlight reel. What chose you to choose that package? Why did you say yes about sharing your story today?
Well, really, I mean, I see it as a huge investment in my business. So I think that we've said we are friends, you and I, Vanessa.
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. And Vanessa has done a little bit of social media work for me and my business about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And that content still has the highest hits. So the highest visibility. If you go on all my stuff, I mean, you guys, I am not an internet sensation, okay? I get like, I don't know, 120 views on my stuff. My stuff from Vanessa, I have like 2,000 views, right away. So that's amazing. And then my pinned pieces have even more views on them, and they look great. And I was like, wait a minute. Well, first of all, I struggle to be consistent on social media. So why I haven't hired you full time, I'm not sure yet. What I'm excited about is the social media content that will come from this. So it's something different than what I would shoot for myself. It is focused on me and my business. And I know that you are constantly saying on Florida Social Butterfly, your Instagram page or your Instagram account, that you
Yeah,
are
my business
constantly
account. Yeah.
saying, yeah, that you're constantly saying, talk about your business, talk about your business, talk about your business. So I was like, well, this gives me a perfect opportunity to talk about my business, and I can put this interview on my website. It gives me an opportunity to have content that I can share to my stories. It gives me the opportunity to have professionally shot content. And it gives me the opportunity to maybe have conversations with people that are in your sphere. So you're going to post it on Florida Social Butterfly as well as the podcast Instagram account, and I get all that exposure. So when you said to me, for this price, this is what we could do. Also, let's back up and have a conversation where you had reached out to me and said, what do you think about this concept? And I said, that's great, but that is an immense value that you are giving. And I said, I would not do that for free. I was like, you are going to be shooting amazing content, spending time with people. And I just thought, what an amazing concept. I said, be creative, you guys, about monetizing your podcast. And this is one way where you could be creative. She's making a little bit of money. It's going to, cover some costs for her. But the reality is the value, the time that she's going to invest versus what I'm paying is upside down. And I'm so excited for her to get the exposure, have you guys see what her social media deliverables or output can really do for your business. It's incredible. So I'm just excited for everybody to experience Florida Social Butterfly, what you actually do for people. And selfishly, I want it for me too.
Yes, I'm so excited to share your business highlight reel after this. You're going to love it. But you touched base on one thing that I feel like every business kind of struggles with, which is the struggle of social media. What part of that feels like the struggle for you? Like what's hard for you to promote yourself online?
Yeah. Really, it's consistency and coming up with new content. I said I haven't hired you yet, and it's because I couldn't afford you at one point. But maybe we need to revisit that conversation. But this gives me an opportunity without having to, have a monthly invoice from you, but I still
Mm-hmm.
get the benefits of you.
Yeah.
Because I do struggle with getting content, with shooting unique content. I can come up with static images all day long, but with this podcast interview, I can repurpose it about, I don't know, 40 different ways. So I can pull short clips, I can pull quotes from it, I can put it in my stories, I can put it on my social, I can make a carousel, like so many different things that I can do. And the best part is you're going to create some of those for me. So
Yep,
I
yep,
don't have
I
to do
am.
that. And then I'm just going to repost them. So I struggle with consistently coming up with new content. Or I think a lot of business owners, we are so close to our topic, we are so close to our business that we don't know what other people would think is interesting. So sometimes when I'm working with my clients, they tell me, you pick the best clip because you're not in this business. So whatever stood out the most to you is what will be the most interesting to other listeners, probably. So I think it's the same thing, whatever stands out to you, Vanessa, that you end up highlighting. I may not have thought like, oh, that's a big deal. I might not think it's a big deal about editing because I love it and it's easy for me, but it's not easy for everybody else. So it gives me, you know, a little bit of spotlight and something different than I would do for myself.
Hey, I love that. How do you feel about like the actual shoot that we did together? Was there anything that you were unexpected about the whole process, or something you felt empowering about it?
Well, I think the thing, because we do know each other and because you do know my business and, we've been friends for a while, you made it a point to really continue to point out that Tiffany, you as a whole, like you as Tiffany Mason, you like music, you like podcasting. And so you really wanted music to be one of the focal points of the content shoot that we did because that's who I am as a person. And I thought that that was really sweet of you to keep saying like, yeah, but you really like music. So, where do you listen to music? What kind of music are you listening to right now? And you incorporated my little pooches. They are definitely my little coworkers. They sit by my feet every day while I work and keep me company. And I love during COVID when they were like, pretend that your dog is your coworker. What is your coworker doing right now? And people would be like, my coworker's always sleeping. My coworker licks water out of a bowl. So ever since then, I've always thought of them as my coworkers. And so it was really sweet that you incorporated them as well. You pointing out something that I may not have pointed out. I do like to post about the dogs, but I'm like, well, that's not podcasting. So I'm not going to point that out. I do love music, but I'm like, well, that's not podcasting. So I'm not going to point that out. But I love that this is going to give me the opportunity to spotlight myself as a person, who I am in my business, growing my like factor, right? If you like music and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was a big passion of hers. How cool is that? We both like music and now we've connected on another level. Or maybe somebody has a French bulldog like me, the world's largest breed of French bulldogs. He is not a little one, you guys.
He's so lovable
So,
though.
he's very sweet. Yes, thank you.
Gosh, yeah. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. There was a lot of content that we created that was like you just walking into your office. It sounds so simple, but like your puppies are walking with you and like those are your coworkers. They have to,
Yeah.
come with you and get ready and sit by your feet and things like that. We're like, oh, like that's just like a mundane like video, but at the same time, it's telling the story of you entering your office because your office obviously is gorgeous. Like you can see it behind her. She has this whole what is that called? Like the
It's like an
sound.
audio wave. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an audio wave, but like, what is that material that they use to like?
Oh,
It's
it's like sound absorbing. It's like acoustic tiles. Yeah,
yes,
they're
acoustic
made out of
tiles.
felt,
That's
but yeah.
there. Yeah, so it's like way to make a cool design with the podcast tiles. That's cool. As on
Yeah, thank you.
audio tiles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna transition a little bit because I do have a hot question for you that I would love for you to answer
Yeah.
because I feel like when it comes to podcasting, there is always that big question that everyone kind of wants to know about, especially as a podcast manager. You've seen it all, but what is your hot take between podcasting that is audio only versus video?
Well, it's kind of a hot button for me, so I'm glad it's called a hot take. Because I feel like the message out in the podcasting space is start a video podcast. Everybody comes to me and they're like, do I need a video podcast? And I have one client that continues to ask me, and I continue to say, like, the return on the investment of time is just not there. If you are demonstrating something, you need to point to a calendar, you need to point to a graph, you are drawing pictures, you're showing somebody how to stretch, those kinds of things. Yes, I think that that's great. Do a video podcast. Let's invest in, good lighting or good cameras or, finding the perfect camera angle, those kind of things. Absolutely. But in a respect like my podcast, it's just two talking heads. So we're just talking about a song that people love. And I think that that comes through in the audio or it comes through in video. So I don't think that that's necessary. But I have a client who does a podcast about organization. And what she loves about the audio only aspect is when she's talking about a closet, you're envisioning your closet at home. When she's talking about a kitchen, you're envisioning your kitchen at home. You're not thinking like, oh, I wish I had those cabinets. Oh, I wish I had the organizational space that that person has, right? You're thinking about your own space, your own stuff, how you would do it for you. That being said, you can still have your podcast go onto YouTube. So my podcast goes onto YouTube. It's just a static image of my artwork, and the audio is still there. The reality is, and the statistics still show, that Apple Podcasts is the largest aggregator app that gets downloads for podcasts, that you can multitask and do a lot more with the audio, okay? Then there's also this balance of quality. So when you have video, I could be sticking my finger up like this. I could be itching my eye. I could be like this, and my audio gets kind of like muffled or whatever. And on the audio version, you don't know what I did. But in the video version, you do know what I did. So it's a lot more forgiving. For audio is less forgiving. So audio, if you're going audio only, it probably should be cleaned up. So I wouldn't advise, and I'm glad that you're not going to. You are still going to go video, but you're going to take the audio off, and then I'm going to clean that up for everybody, which I think is the right path. If you're going to do both, that's great. Put your video up. If you want to edit a little bit, great. And if not, that's fine too, because like I said, the imperfections are a lot more forgivable because you're looking at my background, you're looking at my hair, my body mannerism, you're paying attention to what we're talking about. In the audio only, you only have the audio. So that's kind of my 2 cents, two sides of that coin, and pros and cons.
No, I understand that. I mean, obviously, this podcast is with video, but mostly because of what we talked about earlier about like SEO. Or I just wanted the business owners that are coming on to be on as many platforms as possible. And yes, I guess you can still have a YouTube channel of your podcast, but you don't necessarily actually have to have video. So that I actually didn't really realize about. So that's actually really cool. So what are you most excited about your business right now? Are there any projects or things that are coming soon?
Well, this is another loaded question from you, Miss Vanessa.
Loaded questions.
What am I working on right now at Virtually You? I am working on video. So for about 6 months now, I have really been trying to, again, inundate myself with as much information as I can about video editing, good platforms for it, what to look for, all that kind of stuff, because there is that message right now that everybody wants video. Everybody sees video. So I'm finding, actually, I don't know if you're like this, but when I learn and I figure something out, first of all, I started out going, oh, this is going to be like a mountain's worth of work. And then I get into it and I start doing it, and I'm a big fan of action brings clarity. So I never let a big task stump me, right? Like I'm going to hit that thing head on. I'm going to figure it out. That's my attitude going into it. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. It can't be that hard. I know I can do this. Actually, just 2 days ago, I finished a client's episode and I was able to add a ton of video to it. And it felt really good to have the transitions in there and figure out the platform and just all the connections. It felt like I had pop rocks going off in my brain, but in such a good, empowering way. It was absolutely amazing. It was a beautiful day of work. I had to record an episode that night, Jay, and he was like, well, how'd the day go? And I was like, actually, I had this kind of cool day where I was doing video and I was figuring it all out. And I just felt like I was firing on all cylinders. And it was just it's fun to explore and to learn. And that piece of empowerment, man, Okay, I got one more thing in my arsenal. Okay, I learned one more thing I knew I could. Like, such a great feeling.
So cool. If someone's listening and thinking, I want to start a podcast, but have no idea where to begin, what would you say to them right now?
I would say go to virtuallyuva.com. I have some freebies on there. One of them is checklist to start a podcast. And it will really get you thinking about who am I going to use for a podcast host and what am I going to talk about and what equipment am I going to use. It's got like all the most frequently asked things it addresses it in that checklist. So that would get you thinking about your podcast. Once you've answered those questions or you have an idea of what answers to those questions might be. And when I say what they might be, it will say what podcast host are you going to use. Maybe you go and explore and say, okay, let me ask Tiffany about these two or these three podcast hosts, right? So narrowing down, having options for yourself. Then you can schedule a call with me, and that is a 30-minute, it's a free call where we can talk about ideas that you have for the podcast. Maybe I have some ideas I can add to what you want to do for the podcast, and we can think about what that timeline might look like for you and see if we're a fit and you want to work together. I would love that. So again, it's just virtually you, VA as in virtual assistant. Come on over, download the checklist and book a call with me.
Awesome. So is that the best way
Okay,
for them
wait.
to reach you? What?
I was just going to say, you could also find me on Facebook or Instagram. It's at virtuallyu. On Facebook, it's at virtuallyuva. On Instagram, it's at virtuallyupods. I'm working on it, people. I know, one message across the board. I'm working on it, but that's where we're at right now.
Okay, so we loved having you here at the Why We Started podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Make sure you check out the Why We Started Instagram tomorrow because Tiffany's business highlight reel will go live.
Woohoo!
And all of her information so that you can connect with her. And if you have a podcast or want to start a podcast, you can connect with her in our show notes. So thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you, Vanessa.